Today is September 25, 2025. When Minnetonka mayoral candidate Jonathan Kent, a really smart guy, asked the rhetorical question, and I quote, "I would love to hear the ways in which the United States and Israel are each held accountable for their actions in ways that don't involve self-policing, regulating, and reporting." Now, when he made that statement, when he asked that question, he already knew the answer. And we all know it too. It just forces us to reflect on it. And the answer is, they are not. And they cannot be. Not in the ways weaker nations are. When smaller nations commit atrocities, the world has a standard playbook. Sanctions are imposed, embargoes are enforced, tribunals are convened, leaders are marched before the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court. These are the rituals of accountability. Yet when empire is accused, when our empire is accused, when the United States is accused, the playbook dissolves conveniently. The United States has built structural immunity into all of these tools for accountability that the world has. Its veto at the UN Security Council shields itself and its allies from punishment. If you don't know how the UN works, I know a lot of younger people don't, the UN Security Council will bring up resolutions and the United States can stop it anytime it wants. At the UN General Assembly, they can do no more than issue symbolic resolutions. They are not legally binding. It really doesn't have teeth to actually go after the United States if we do not follow what a resolution says to do. The International Court of Justice, we just ignore it. The International Criminal Court, not only do we ignore it, we reject it, but we also created a law in the United States that authorizes military action if the ICC dares prosecute an American. For example, if the ICC decides that it wants to take in a US president for crimes against humanity, we will attack militarily the countries involved in the ICC. And because the global economy runs on US dollars, other nations cannot risk imposing sanctions on us without crippling their own economies. Israel, too, benefits from this shield. When its conduct is questioned, American vetoes and aid silence calls for accountability. So when accountability does happen, it is only the accountability the empire grants itself. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. In Vietnam, during the war, after the My Lai massacre, where hundreds of civilians were slaughtered by American soldiers, only one officer was punished, and even he was eventually pardoned. In Iraq, a more recent example, after the horrors of Abu Ghraib prison were exposed, a handful of low-ranking soldiers were scapegoated, while 0 generals or leaders faced consequences. During the Iran-Contra scandal, when I was a little boy, the government was caught red-handed running an illegal operation to fund rebels in Nicaragua. Convictions followed, but presidential pardons swept them away. Again and again and again, accountability is staged, managed, and neutered. A theater designed to preserve the empire's image without touching its core power. And here is where Jonathan Kent's question turns back on us. If empire exempts itself from accountability abroad, what happens at home? We are literally watching the answer unfold before us when we turn on the TV or turn on our phones. The second Trump administration treats the Constitution as a nuisance, a suggestion, a speed bump on the road to unchecked power. The president literally has said several times that he does not like the Constitution or the parts of the Constitution that stops him from doing what he wants. The rule of law is being trivialized when courts are threatened, when journalists are silenced, when political enemies are prosecuted, when entire groups of citizens like immigrants, LGBTQ people, artists and satirists, professors, and the poor are marked as targets of state power. If empire claims immunity abroad, presidents who see themselves as emperors will claim the same immunity at home. The veto becomes executive orders. That's what we see. The refusal to join the ICC becomes refusal to honor subpoenas. That's what we see. The shielding of allies abroad becomes pardons for loyalists at home. That's exactly what we're seeing. This is not just a foreign policy issue. It is a survival issue for American democracy because if the presidency is not held in check, if Americans do not insist on real accountability at home, then the same impunity we project abroad will corrode us from within. The Empire of Rome exempted its rulers from accountability, and the Republic eventually collapsed into dictatorship under really, really bad emperors. Britain exempted its monarchy and parliament from restraint, and what happened to its empire? It rotted under rebellion through World War I. Japan, before World War II, exempted its emperor from law, and its empire ended in ruin. Unchecked power is always the prelude to collapse. That is why it matters, in this exact moment, to hold the presidency accountable, especially when it treats the Constitution as trivial. A president who shrugs at the First Amendment, who mocks checks and balances, who demands loyalty over law is not leading a democracy. He is leading an empire. An empire has always been the enemy of accountability. So when Jonathan Kent asks his question, the true answer is this: the only accountability that exists for the United States and Israel must come from within, from citizens who refuse to accept imperial immunity as the norm. Because if we do not insist on accountability at home, if we do not insist on holding our own leaders accountable, no one abroad will ever impose it. Empires believe themselves untouchable. They believe law is for others and not for them. But empires fall. Rome fell, Britain fell, Japan fell. The empire America built will too, if we confuse immunity with strength. Which means the task falls to us, to demand accountability where empire denies it, to defend the Constitution when presidents endanger it, to insist that the rule of law applies not only to the weak, but also to the powerful, because without accountability, democracy is nothing but empire draped in stars and stripes.